Hello, Leonela. This is my response to your paper 1. Here we go. Medicine back then. Everything has a beginning that comes to an end, but is that the case with medicine? The most obvious and logical answer would be yes, but there are an infinite amount of possibilities within this question. Yes and no, but for right now it's a definite no. The world hasn't been around for half of what it will exist. Coronavirus is my main source of proof that we are nowhere near done discovering diseases and viruses. With how much the human race enjoys to pollute, dig up minerals that can give out toxic chemicals, or any radiation usage. Okay. I want to get into the past of medicine. Everyone has a past, so does medicine. I want to think about how they decided what illnesses were, and how they came to know that it wasn't common in most people. In an article from Britannica called History of Medicine, this section that's called Early Medicine and Folklore, it went into how medicine was believed to be a little bit of magic. My question follows, when was medicine considered a profession, and when did people come to trust medicine? Okay, I think I'll read a little more before I weigh in. Let's go all the way back to when the first illness broke out. The people were confused as to what it could have been. Most believed at the time that an enemy or a god that would wish the illness upon the person who got sick. Most believed at the time that an enemy or god that would wish the illness maybe had caused the person to get sick. Finding the cure or remedy was all through a trial and error, what herbs helped out a cold and what to do for a splint. Medicine was believed to be magical or religious. Before performing a procedure or taking an herb, there would be a chant or some sort of ceremony. It is assumed that this is why doctors back then were referred to as witch doctors or sorcerers so frequently. The start of medical practices is fascinating because if we had a choice to decide what we would have done differently, what would change? Would we have more far advanced than what we are today, or not as advanced? The question renders forever. There are infinite amounts of possibilities of how this came to be today. What we do know is what's happened as of right now. Okay. So what I'm seeing in this first page and a bit is that introductions are really hard. That's the main thing I'm seeing. They're really hard. Honestly, I think maybe they're the hardest part of writing, at least this kind of writing. And I feel like when you have tried to do some more kind of general talking about leading up to this, it's not, it doesn't feel like it's really leading me into what you're talking about so much as when you get into the details, I'm like, oh yes, here's where we're going. So like the detail about blah blah blah. I found it. I'm looking for it. The detail about what herbs helped out a cold, what to do for a splint, a chant or some sort of ceremony. Those details. Also the detail about witch doctors or sorcerers. I would go back through those first 3 paragraphs and focus what you wrote on those specific bits. I feel like I can see maybe what you were trying to do about, the whole idea of going way back from like everything in the world and then focusing in on the one thing you're going to look at, which is medicine, and then looking at how it's changed. Like, that's a great way to write an introduction. I just think in this case, you have a whole lot of this sort of general big stuff that you don't really need, and that sometimes actually kind of tangles you up, I think, and tangles up your ideas and your writing. So yeah, I think just using those little pieces. And when you revise also, don't worry about making it too short. That won't matter anymore. So feel free to just cut everything you think you don't need. It's liberating. Okay. When smallpox was discovered, this was a time of fear. People were getting rashes, feeling ill, and had no clue why they weren't thinking about why they were getting these red spots, other than thinking maybe they ran into a poisonous plant. Oh, that would be fair. A fair guess. In 1799, Benjamin Waterhouse introduced the vaccines to the United States. The smallpox vaccine? This gave him opportunities to then proceed with a new procedure. It wasn't for another 44 years that a new discovery was made. Or, so was that, okay, the vaccine for smallpox that was? Did I just make that up? No, it says smallpox. I tell you, I'm trying to drink the coffee and wake up today, but. Okay. And do you mean it was another 44 years before a new discovery was made about vaccines? Because there must have been things, found and realized and created and invented in between 1799 and 1850. But maybe not things as important as a vaccine. Excuse me. Nevertheless, the 1800s identified resources and illnesses that we know today. Anesthesia was discovered in the year 1846 and used by John Collins Warren. He performed the first public demonstration of anesthesia. That's an opportunity, I have to say, as a reader. I'm like, what was the demonstration? I'd love to hear about that. That sounds crazy. Because now I'm imagining this person, like, they put him to sleep and they're like, look, we're just going to cut a big thing in his arm and he won't even know. Like, that sounds horrifying and super interesting. Okay. The 1900s is when everything started rolling. We picked up more knowledge on medicine, transitioning from the 1890s into the 1900s. Theobald Smith found out the mechanism of insect-borne disease transmission and how vaccines can be killed by the heat. Oh, cool. I think about all the people who suffered from diabetes. I always wondered, would they just end up passing away? Yeah, they did. Or just live a very ill life. Well, maybe some of that. In 1922, Elliot Jocelyn introduced the wonderful savior of diabetic people of the United States. Well, of the whole world, right? Insulin. Yep, big deal. Okay. So, in this paragraph, it felt to me like you were wanting to give us kind of an overview of some of the, like, in the history of medicine, some of the, like, highlight moments. So, and the ones you specifically talked about seem to be smallpox vaccine, anesthesia, insect-borne disease transmission, how vaccines can be killed by heat, and diabetes. I'm not sure you need to talk about all of those, but if you do, maybe the transitions could make that a little clearer. Let me see. He introduced the vaccine. Yeah, the 44 years part confused me. I would just maybe not even divide it into, like, centuries, I think. You just go 1799, this happened. 1846, this happened. 1890s, this happened. 1922, this happened. I feel like, I appreciate that you're trying to transition between those, but I feel like the transitions are shown in the years, right? That we can see as a reader, like, okay, here with this year, and we're going on. And I think the transitions, I think you don't need so much talking in between, like transitioning from the 1890s into the 1900s. Yeah, I don't think you need that. Because the years, I think, do it for you. Okay, at least every year a new discovery was made in the 1900s. The progression of medicine from then and now is fascinating. The most captivating discoveries to me are the different machineries used back then and how they came to discover and create them. How did we manage to be able to stick a camera into the body through such a small wire? I know, it's crazy. Or being able to hook someone to an EKG and monitor their health. Bizarre to say the least. My blood starts pumping and the adrenaline in my body starts to rush when I start to think about these inquiries. I know, me too, but what can I say? I can be quite a science nerd at times. Okay, so this paragraph before was about discoveries, I guess, and discoveries of treatments. This paragraph is going to be about machines. And the machine you mentioned at first is the camera on the thin wire. So then I'm expecting, oh, but you don't talk about this. What I was expecting you to talk about in that paragraph was, like with the machinery, I'm imagining like the anesthesia machinery. I mean, you could go back through those things you just talked about and say there's machinery involved in anesthesia, there's machinery involved in creating and transporting vaccines, there's machinery involved in, I don't know, about treating insect-borne diseases, maybe. And there's certainly machinery that I know has changed more recently for helping people who have diabetes to test their blood sugar and to do their insulin more. Let's say, not delicately, more specifically, effectively, I don't know. I don't have diabetes. Okay. Yeah, so I think either, it feels like you started on something in that paragraph, but then you didn't say it. So I think either talk about it, or then I don't know why it's there. Entering the 2000s, there's not as many discoveries, to be quite honest. I would call the 2000s more of an evolution of the discoveries from the past. Well, also, we've only had 20 years of the 2000s, so let's go easy on the people in the 2000s. More vaccines were introduced, different strategies on healing, and new advanced medicines were made. One of the discoveries made me question it so hard, and it was the 2019 HMS meeting of microbiology found traces of herpes in the Achilles heel. What? And then you're like, what now? I know you're the person who laughs at my jokes, so I see you have more. Your writing is also more emotional. I appreciate that. It's not for a formal paper. You probably shouldn't say what now with the. It is a formal paper. I mean, I appreciate it as a reader, but that's partly because I do so much reading of more formal papers, and they're. It's kind of fun to see a little drama, but you really shouldn't do that in a formal paper. Okay, this rarity was very much inarticulate. This rarity was inarticulate. So the rarity, meaning it's found so seldom, was inarticulate. It wasn't explained carefully, or you didn't understand it. I don't know what that means. Not to forget all the acts that went along with the discoveries, for example, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Aha! Here's another way you're hinting at how you can organize this. You can have a whole paragraph just about legislation. Act is one of the biggest health insurance expansions. The law that citizens need to have health insurance went through the Supreme Court. Oh my God, yeah, you could write a whole paper about that, for sure. Another, the Oregon's Death with Dignity Act. This act was a little sad, but they're doing it for better and for worse. It is a little sad. This act is just saying that we should allow terminally ill individuals to end their lives with lethal medication that a doctor prescribed. Yep. All in all, medical history has much to cover. The doctrine of science changed the world as we know it. Without the information gathered, what would humanity be today? Would we be dying at 20 like in the old days? Oh, 20 if you were lucky, friend. I'm not going to go into that. Come on. We've got enough difficult things to deal with. There are so many questions. I'm not going to talk about people dying before 20. There's so many questions one can ask themselves about medicine, but at the end of the day, not many of the questions have answers but theories. My curiosity lingers around all the information I've covered. It's actually possible to know every single different illness and medical discovery, major or minor, more than likely, but something will be overlooked. I will continue to wonder as to why and how these doctors manage to figure out these phenomenons. Me too. Me too. Okay, let me, do time check real quick to see how close I'm running out of time with you. Okay, I got like one more minute. So, the sort of asides and the question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, save that stuff. Take it out of this paper, but save it for when you do your presentation, the last thing we do. Being more animated and showing more emotion in that that's just the right time to do it, because people have a bunch of those to watch, and to have some like kind of a little more flavor and color to it is helpful. And my overall idea about your revision is that it seems to me you want to talk about discoveries, machinery, legislation. That means in your revised version, I would suggest you have one paragraph about each of those, maybe 2 paragraphs about each of those, and then take out anything else that it seems like you don't really need, that doesn't really say anything. Again, this doesn't have to make the page count, the revision. I just want you to be able to try out these new skills. So hopefully that's helpful. Sorry it took so long.